Hey, everybody, and welcome. We are so excited to dive into something we know is a big deal for anyone out there learning English, and it's how to, quiet that busy mind and just let those words out.
Absolutely. We hear from so many English learners, and they tell us how they kind of get stuck in their own heads. Right before they're about to speak, they're thinking about all the things like, is my grammar perfect? Is my pronunciation spot on? Am I even going to sound right? Has anyone else out there felt that same thing?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, think about it. You are putting in so much work to learn. And of course, you want to get it right. You want to express yourself the best way possible. But I think what happens is that overthinking almost becomes like a roadblock. You start hesitating. There are all these awkward silences. And sometimes you might even not speak at all. And that is the opposite of what we're going for.
And that's exactly what we want to unpack today. The whole point is to help you guys figure out how to move past that mental block and just start speaking English more freely, more confidently, and with a lot less of that, inner battle going on.
Exactly. And, a key idea we really want you to walk away with today is that real fluency,
Yeah,
that ability to speak English naturally and smoothly doesn't just appear after you've studied a ton in silence. It really comes alive and it grows when you actually start using those words and phrases out loud in real conversations.
that's it. I mean, you can spend hours and hours studying grammar rules and memorizing vocabulary lists. And yeah, those things are helpful. But the real magic happens when you actually use that knowledge when you're talking to someone. Speaking is what brings it all together.
So, okay, let's break this down a bit. Why is this overthinking thing so common for people learning English? What are some of the big reasons why we sort of freeze up like that in our minds?
Well, one of the biggest ones I think is that fear of making mistakes.
Yeah.
It's totally natural to worry about what other people might think or if they'll understand us or even just feeling embarrassed if we don't speak perfectly. But here's the thing to remember. Even native English speakers make mistakes all the time. They trip over words, they might use the wrong tense sometimes, or mispronounce something. The difference is they don't let those little slip-ups stop them from talking and getting their point across.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. Think about it. We hear these little errors all the time from native speakers, and it's not a big deal. They just keep going. But for English learners, there's often this huge pressure to be perfect from the get-go. So they might pause a lot or try to correct themselves in the middle of a sentence. And sometimes they just completely freeze up because they're so scared to say anything at all. But like you said, improving comes from speaking regularly, not from being perfect.
Right. And another thing that plays a big role is this habit of translating in our heads. Instead of trying to think in English right away, a lot of learners will build a whole sentence in their first language and then trying to find the matching English words. But this takes extra time, and it can make conversations feel slow and awkward. And sometimes a direct translation just doesn't quite work in English, so it can be frustrating. Have you ever noticed yourself doing that?
Oh, all the time. It's like your brain is juggling two languages at once and everything slows down. And by the time you finish that translation in your head, the conversation's moved on and you feel like you've missed your chance. And that can make you even less likely to speak up next time.
Yeah, it's a cycle. And we also can't forget about confidence, or in some cases, the lack of it. Learners might feel self-conscious about their accent or worry that they just don't know enough words. And this can easily lead to them staying silent. But sadly, that silence can actually make those feelings of not being good enough even stronger. It's this loop where not feeling confident makes you speak less, and then speaking less makes you even less confident.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. But we want to reassure everyone that having perfect pronunciation and knowing tons and tons of words aren't the first steps to fluency. What matters more at the beginning is communicating your ideas clearly and being willing to participate even if you feel a little unsure.
Exactly. So we've talked about why this overthinking happens. Now let's look at what we can do about it. Why is it so important to actually start speaking even if it feels uncomfortable? And how can we kind of bypass that overthinking process?
Yeah, we've seen the problem. Now let's focus on why actually speaking English, even when you don't feel totally ready, is the real key to getting better and becoming fluent.
Well, like we said earlier, fluency comes mostly from practice. It's not some theoretical thing you master by studying in silence. The more you speak English, the more your brain gets used to putting those English sentences together automatically without you having to think hard about every single word and every grammar rule. If you keep stopping and analyzing before you speak, you're not giving your brain the chance to develop that natural speed and flow that makes someone sound fluent.
That's such a good point. Think about how we learned our first language. When we were babies and little kids, we didn't know anything about grammar rules or have huge vocabularies. We listened to people, we repeated sounds, and we just tried to talk, even if it was just babbling at first. And over time, we got better at speaking naturally just by trying and making mistakes along the way.
And learning a second language like English can be similar. Instead of waiting for some imaginary moment when your English will be perfect, start speaking now as much as you can, even if you know you'll make mistakes. That's where the real learning and progress happens.
You know, there's this helpful saying that I love, speak first, fix later. I think that really captures it. Focus on getting your message across, and if there are any little errors, you can worry about them afterwards. Your speaking will sound way more natural, and the conversation will keep moving.
And here's something that might be encouraging to remember. When native English speakers are listening to you, they're usually more focused on understanding what you're trying to say than on finding grammar mistakes. If you can communicate your ideas clearly, most people won't even notice those little errors or they won't mind at all.
That's definitely a relief to hear, isn't it? Sometimes we imagine everyone's listening like a super strict English teacher ready to point out every single mistake. But in reality, most people just want to connect with you and understand what you mean.
Exactly. And actually speaking with confidence, even if you make a few mistakes, often makes a better impression than speaking perfectly but sounding hesitant. Confidence shows that you're engaged in the conversation and that you're ready to communicate.
So we've covered why it's important to speak more and overthink less. Now let's get practical. What are some concrete steps that our listeners can start taking today to break this habit and just start speaking more freely?
Absolutely. Let's dive into some actionable tips you could start using right away. One really powerful technique is to make a conscious effort to think in English. Instead of automatically thinking in your native language and then translating, try to form your thoughts directly in English.
That might sound tough at first, but there are easy ways to practice. For example, as you're going through your day, try describing what you're doing in your mind in English. So if you're making a cup of coffee, you can think, I am putting the kettle on, the water is boiling, I am pouring the hot water into the cup. It might feel a little strange in the beginning, but it's an amazing way to make English feel more natural in your own thought process.
Exactly. Another important tip is to try and let go of that need for perfect grammar, especially when you're actually speaking. Look, grammar is important for your overall progress in the long run, but when you're in a conversation, the goal is to communicate your ideas. Even if you make a few grammar mistakes, the person you're talking to will most likely still understand what you mean.
It's like we said before, if you get too hung up on trying to use perfect grammar while you're talking, you'll probably end up pausing a lot. And that can actually make you feel less confident. Trust that as you get more experience with the language, your brain will naturally start to self-correct over time.
And for anyone who might not have a lot of opportunities to speak English with other people, here's a really valuable tool. Practice speaking to yourself. You can stand in front of the mirror and pretend you're having a conversation, or even just describe what you see around you out loud in English. This can really help you get more comfortable with physically speaking English words.
You know, I think a lot of learners already do this without even realizing it. It's a low-pressure way to build fluency and confidence. And another great technique is called shadowing. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. Shadowing is basically listening to someone speaking English. It could be from a YouTube video, a podcast, even a movie, and immediately repeating what they're saying. Try to copy their pronunciation, the rhythm of their speech, their speed, as closely as you can. It's an awesome way to get a feel for natural English speech patterns without having to stop and analyze grammar or vocabulary.
And the best part about shadowing is you don't need a teacher or a language partner. You can do it anywhere, anytime, with pretty much any English audio or video. It really helps you get used to that natural flow.
Another practical tip is to consciously try to use simple sentences, especially when you're feeling unsure. A lot of learners hesitate because they try to build these really complex sentences with lots of different parts. But it's perfectly fine to express your ideas using shorter, more direct sentences. For example, instead of saying something like, although I was feeling quite tired, I made the decision to go for a walk in the park because I thought it might make me feel more awake. You could just say, I was tired, but I went for a walk. I hoped it would make me feel more awake. The most important thing is to keep that conversation flowing smoothly.
I agree. Being clear is key. You don't need to impress anyone with super complicated language. Simple and clear is always better. And speaking of clear communication, it's so important to not be afraid of making mistakes.
Absolutely. Mistakes are not failures. They're a completely natural and essential part of learning any new language. If you're too scared to make mistakes, you'll probably avoid speaking altogether, and that's the real problem. Each mistake you make is actually a chance to learn something new and get better. It shows you the areas where you might need to focus a little more. What's your attitude towards making mistakes when you speak English?
Oh, I totally agree. They're proof that you're putting yourself out there and actually trying. And on a similar note, immersing yourself in English every day can make a huge difference in how comfortable you feel with the language and how naturally you speak.
Definitely. Surround yourself with English as much as you can. Listen to podcasts, watch movies and TV shows in English, read English books and articles. The more you're exposed to the language, the more your brain will naturally pick up those patterns and rhythms. And that'll make it easier to speak without having to think so hard about every single word.
And one last thing, try setting a small speaking goal for yourself. For instance, you could aim to speak English for just 5 minutes every day without stopping. And even if you don't know the exact word, try to find a different way to express your thought. Pushing yourself to keep talking, even when it's a little challenging, will build so much confidence over time.
That's a great way to get the ball rolling. The more you actually try to speak, the more comfortable and confident you'll become in expressing yourself in English.
Okay, so just to do a quick recap of those tips we talked about, try to think in English. Don't worry too much about perfect grammar when you're speaking practice, talking to yourself. Use shadowing, keep your sentences simple. And remember, mistakes are opportunities to learn. Immerse yourself in English and set a daily speaking goal.
Those are all things you can start using right away to help you break free from that overthinking trap and start speaking English with more confidence.
Now, we wanted to make this even more practical for you, so we're going to do a little spontaneous speaking practice right here, and then we're going to encourage you, our listener, to try it too.
Yeah, this is a short exercise to help you practice speaking without pausing too long or overthinking every word. We'll give you a simple topic, and you try to speak about it for about 30 seconds without stopping. And if you can't think of the perfect word, just try to describe it a different way. The point is to keep those words flowing.
Exactly. To show you how it's done, we'll each go first.
All right, my topic is describe what you usually do in the morning.
Okay. In the morning, I usually wake up around 7:30 a.m. First thing I do is open the curtains to let some light in. Then I head to the kitchen to make myself a cup of coffee. While the coffee's brewing, I might check my phone for any messages or anything important. After I have my coffee, I usually get dressed and then start thinking about what I need to do for the rest of the day. Great. You kept going even when you had to think for a second about what to say next. Okay, my turn. My topic is describe your favorite way to relax. All right, so my favorite way to relax is probably listening to music. I love putting on some headphones and just closing my eyes and getting lost in the music. I listen to all different kinds of music depending on how I'm feeling, but it always helps me feel calm and peaceful. It's a really nice way to unwind after a busy day.
Excellent. You both did a great job showing how to keep speaking even when you're thinking on your feet. All right, now it's your turn, our listener. We're going to give you 3 simple topics. Choose one and speak about it for about 30 seconds without stopping. Remember, if you don't know a word, just describe it another way. Just keep talking. Here are your topics. 1, describe your favorite kind of weather. 2, talk about what you enjoy doing on the weekends. 3, describe a small everyday object that's near you. Pick one and start speaking now.
So how did that feel? Even if it felt a little tough, that's completely normal. The more you practice this kind of spontaneous speaking, the easier and more natural it'll become. Remember, the goal is just to speak, not to be perfect in those 30 seconds.
We really encourage you to try this exercise, often, maybe even every day. You might be surprised how quickly your confidence in speaking English starts to grow.
Now, we've talked a lot about techniques, but there's another really crucial part of becoming a confident English speaker, and that's your mindset.
Absolutely. The way you think and feel about learning English can have a huge impact on how well you do. So let's talk about some important mindset shifts that can help you overcome that overthinking and approach speaking with more confidence.
First of all, it's important to remember that confidence isn't something you wait for. It's something you build by doing. A lot of learners think, oh, I'll start speaking more when I feel more confident, but it actually works the other way around.
Yeah.
You start feeling more confident after you start speaking, even if it's just a little bit at first.
That's so important. Don't wait until you feel completely ready. Just start taking small steps and start speaking now. Another big shift is letting go of that need to be perfect. Like we've been saying, even native speakers make mistakes. Your goal should be to communicate effectively, not to speak flawlessly.
Right. Instead of getting discouraged when you make a mistake, Try to see it differently. Think of it as helpful feedback. It's proof that you're pushing yourself and learning new things. If you never make any mistakes, it might mean you're not challenging yourself enough.
And try not to compare your progress to other learners. Everyone learns at their own speed, and comparing yourself to someone else can be discouraging. Instead, focus on comparing yourself to where you were yesterday or last week or last month. Are you speaking more often? Are you feeling a bit more comfortable when you do speak? If the answer is yes, then you're making progress.
That's such a healthy way to look at it. Celebrate those improvements you're making, no matter how small they seem. And lastly, try to embrace that feeling of being a little uncomfortable. Learning a new language definitely means stepping outside of your comfort zone. It might feel a little awkward or challenging sometimes, but that's often where the biggest growth happens.
So instead of avoiding English conversations because they seem scary, try to embrace them. See that feeling of being uncomfortable as a sign that you're expanding your abilities and getting better.
To sum up those key mindset shifts, remember, confidence comes from taking action. So start speaking now. Let go of the need to be perfect and focus on communicating your message view mistakes as helpful feedback. Focus on your own progress instead of comparing yourself to others. And don't be afraid to embrace those uncomfortable feelings as a sign that you're growing.
If you can adopt those ways of thinking, the whole process of learning to speak English and getting over that overthinking will feel so much easier and maybe even more enjoyable.
Now, before we wrap up today, we wanted to quickly go over some of the key words we use just to make sure everything is crystal clear.
Yeah, this can be especially helpful for anyone who's still working on their English vocabulary.
So first, we talked about overthinking. And that basically means thinking about something way too much, especially when it prevents you from actually doing something.
Fluency means being able to speak a language smoothly and easily.
Hesitating means pausing before you say or do something, usually because you're feeling uncertain or a little nervous.
Pronunciation is the way that words are spoken in a language.
Grammar refers to the rules of a language. They tell you how to put words together to form sentences.
When something happens naturally, it means it occurs in a way that feels normal and not forced or fake.
Being confident means feeling sure of yourself and your abilities.
To translate means to change words or text from one language to another.
An accent is a way of pronouncing a language that's connected to a specific region or group of people.
Vocabulary refers to all the words that someone knows and uses.
To analyze means to examine something carefully and in detail to understand it better.
Perfection is the state of being completely free from faults or mistakes.
To communicate means to share information, ideas, or feelings with someone else.
To immerse yourself in something like a language means to surround yourself with it and really get involved in it.
Spontaneous means something that happens naturally without being planned beforehand.
Mindset refers to a person's way of thinking, their attitudes and beliefs.
And finally, discomfort is that feeling of being uneasy, a little awkward, or slightly worried.
We hope those explanations are helpful.
So as we come to the end of our deep dive today, we really want to leave you with a message of encouragement. Learning English is a journey. You'll have good days and tougher days. But remember, every single time you try to speak, you're making progress, even if it doesn't always feel like it in the moment.
That's so true. The most important thing is to keep trying. Don't wait for the perfect moment to start speaking more. The best time is now. Every day you wait is another chance you're missing to move forward.
And please don't let that fear of what others might think stop you. In reality, most people you'll meet will admire you for putting in the effort to learn a new language. They're not nearly as critical as you might imagine.
You can do this. You're smart. You have everything you need to learn English successfully. The key is believing in yourself and taking action consistently.
So our final message for you today is this. Believe in yourself. Believe in your ability to learn and speak English. Take the tips and the mindset shifts we talked about and put them into practice. Never stop learning, and most importantly, never stop trying to speak. Fluency in English is absolutely within your reach.
We really appreciate you being here with us for this deep dive into speaking English more confidently. We strongly encourage you to try that spontaneous speaking exercise we did and to keep pushing yourself to speak even when it feels a little uncomfortable.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and remember, stop thinking and start talking. We'll see you on our next deep dive.
See you next time and keep practicing.